have a consultation with both of you to see what we need to do. Otherwise, the matter will remain on the order paper for committee of the whole tomorrow afternoon. Next order.
Order number 9, motion, report of the National Dialogue Committee.
Honorable members, order number 9, the report will be debated in accordance with the motions we passed on the management of our time. It is allocated 2.5 hours. The majority and minority leaders have 10 minutes each. Each other member speaking has 5 minutes. Depending on the nature of interest and depending on how repetitious you would be in your contributions, the House Business Committee agreed that we may reduce the time to 3 minutes per member. But as it is, you passed a motion, that motion of this nature, 2.5 hours, 10 minutes for majority, 10 minutes for minority, 5 minutes for each contributor. So majority leader, you are called upon to move the motion. I see names already on the screen. If they are not for this motion, wipe them out and log in afresh so that we give everybody a fair chance to contribute. Majority Leader.
Majority Leader. Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, I beg to move the adoption of the National Dialogue Committee's report, or what was christened NADCO. And this report, Honorable Speaker, Honorable Speaker, sorry, I beg to move that this House adopts the report of the National Dialogue Committee, which was laid on the table of the House on Thursday, 7th December 2023. Honorable Speaker, I was saying this report culminated from a long process that began with the bipartisan talks that were co-chaired by the Honorable Murugara and the Honorable Otiende Omolo. Let me take this opportunity to thank those two members and the members of the bipartisan team that formed the basis of our talks, Honorable Speaker, because we benefited immensely from the work that the two gentlemen had begun through the bipartisan talks. Honorable Speaker, allow me to also take this opportunity to thank the Honorable Kalonzo Musyoka, my co-chair, and the leader of the delegation from the Azimio side, and ably assisted by the leader of minority, and also thank the other members of the committee, including my deputy, the Honorable Cecily Mbarire, the governor for Embu County, the Honorable Aaron Cheruyot, Honorable Hassan Omar, the Honorable Eugene Wamalwa, Honorable Amina Mnyazi, and of course, I've mentioned the leader of my minority, the Honorable Pio Wandai. Honorable Speaker, this report, or rather the NADCO committee, considered all the 5 issues that we had agreed. And you remember, Honorable Speaker, many of us had other issues besides the 5 issues. And we framed our issues around 5 thematic areas: on electoral justice and related matters, outstanding constitutional matters, fidelity to political parties and coalitions, and the law on multi-party democracy, entrenching of funds into the Constitution, and issues. And I don't to dwell into all the recommendations that came out of the report. Members, you remember, is a very bulky report that also factored in memoranda and submissions from many Kenyans. Honorable Speaker, we were able to listen to very many Kenyans who submitted memoranda to us, from about 258 written memoranda that were sent to the committee. 60 stakeholders appeared before the committee, and we listened to over 704 persons. And that tells you, Honorable Speaker, that this report factored in views from very many Kenyans from across the country. Honorable Speaker, we also have a retinue of proposals on legislative instruments or statutory instruments that emanated from this report. And Honorable Speaker, we have a total of 9 legislative instruments or legislative proposals that we shall be submitting to Parliament for publication upon the adoption of this report. And key among these legislative proposals, Honorable Speaker, touch on IEBC, on electoral justice and electoral reforms, Honorable Speaker. And there are quite a number of legislative proposals, beginning with the reconstitution of the IEBC panel. We have proposed amendments to the IEBC Act of 2011 to provide that the selection panel, Honorable Speaker, will be reconstituted. And Honorable Speaker, you remember the courts only a few weeks ago, about 2 or 3 weeks ago, in trying to cure the lacuna that exists in law, because you know the panel as it is today, Honorable Speaker, has no timelines, and they could take forever, Honorable Speaker. But with the amendment, besides reconstituting the IBC panel and growing the membership from 7 to 9 members to ensure that we have a cross-section of views and interest groups accommodated within the selection panel, we are also creating a timeline, and the panel will now be required to finalize the exercise within 90 days. From the day that the panel is appointed, they must complete the work and submit the nominees to the president, and they shall stand dissolved thereafter. Honorable Speaker, we have also allowed the Parliament, both houses, using a simple majority, the latitude to extend time for this panel should they need the more time than the 90 days that will be provided for under the new act, should we adopt or rather enact the legislative proposal that amends the IBC Act of 2011. Honorable Speaker, it is also noteworthy that the committee has recommended a transitional clause to provide that the selection panel existing immediately at the commencement date of the act will cease to exist, but any person who is working in that panel is eligible to be renominated by any of the nominating bodies, Honorable Speaker. So therefore, for instance, the political parties liaison committee that had 2 nominees, they will now have 3 nominees under the new panel, and any of the nominees that were under that selection panel could be renominated by the political parties liaison committee, or in that case, even those under the Parliamentary Service Commission, they can renominate the same people. Those under LSK can, if the selection bodies desire, they can renominate the same people. Honorable Speaker, critical among the other changes, Honorable Speaker, is a recommendation by the committee to Article 89 of the Constitution on delimitation of boundaries. Honorable Speaker, again, you know the courts have also pronounced themselves on the question of delimitation of boundaries, and we had a statutory deadline that lapses at the end of March, which is only next month, Honorable Speaker. And it's therefore not practical under the circumstances to be able to delimit boundaries within a period of a few weeks after the adoption of this report. And therefore, we are proposing that Article 89 of the Constitution is amended to provide for extension of the period for conduct of the review of the constituency's boundaries by IBC, where for any reason, like the case is this time, the review of the names and boundaries of constituents is not completed within the time stipulated under Article 89(2) of the Constitution. And therefore, Honorable Speaker, we shall also be bringing those amendments. Honorable Speaker, on audit of the 2022 presidential elections, we did engage in this matter, and we agreed that in line with the constitutional provisions, Honorable Speaker, that we evaluate all our presidential and election processes. We agreed that we shall not be reviewing since the presidential election was settled, and that is a matter now beyond us, Honorable Speaker, and settled by the Supreme Court. But we shall, in line with our constitutional provisions, be evaluating, or rather have a process of an evaluation of the 2022 electoral process, so that, Honorable Speaker, we ensure that future elections, beginning with the 2027 elections, Kenyans are certain that the election results are credible and the entire electoral process, right from registration of voters, Honorable Speaker, up to the time votes are tallied and winners announced, be it for MCA all the way to governor and presidential elections, that Kenyans can be certain that those elections have followed a process that ensures the entire process is credible, Honorable Speaker. And that, Honorable Speaker, we have created in the report a mechanism where we shall, within 21 days after adoption of this report, have a system where we have a panel that will identify either one firm or two firms to conduct an evaluation process of the last elections, Honorable Speaker, with a view to improving on the systems, because this is what our constitution provides for, that after every election we shall, IEBC actually is mandated under our constitution to ensure that they have a system that evaluates that electoral process with a view to enhancing or rather to making the processes, the electoral processes, more efficient and more credible election after election. Honorable Speaker, on outstanding constitutional matters, there are issues that touch on 2/3 gender rule, and I know many of our lady members of parliament have been very keen on this issue. I do know, Honorable Speaker, that there was a ministerial working team on this aspect, and indeed, we did recommend that on the 2/3 gender rule, the committee recommended that the multi-sectoral working group on the realization of the 2/3 gender rule under the Ministry of Public Service, Gender and Affirmative Action finalizes its work and recommend a framework of implementation of the 2/3 gender principle and submit its report to Parliament for consideration. And Honorable Speaker, I had an engagement this afternoon with Honorable Sabina Chege, the party leader of Jubilee, who has been very keen in pursuing this matter. And she has indicated to me that following the meeting we had yesterday between our parliamentary group and the cabinet yesterday in Naivasha, indeed the Ministry of Gender, Ministry of Public Service, Gender and Affirmative Action has indicated to our lady members of parliament that they have indeed concluded this and they have a report ready, and we shall be engaging with the cabinet secretary to be able to relay that report so that as we adopt this report, Honorable Speaker, we can have that report from the multi-sectoral team form part of the legislative proposals that will come as a consequence of this NADCO report. And we shall be engaging with the Minister, Honorable Aisha, to have that ready. Honorable Speaker, on the cost of living, Honorable Speaker, because this is again, maybe before I get to the cost of living, Honorable Speaker, on entrenching of funds into the Constitution, we did recommend that NGCDF, because of the critical role it plays together with NGAF and the Senate Oversight Fund, that they be entrenched into our Constitution, Honorable Speaker, and more importantly, on the Ward Development Fund, to ensure that all our MCAs in our constituencies and in our wards have access to a Ward Development Fund, Honorable Speaker, and every ward, no MCA, will have to kneel before a governor to be able to access development funds to their wards. We also recommended that the Ward Development Fund be established by statute in accordance with Article 207, sub-Article 4B of the Constitution, to ensure that our wards and our ward representatives are also able to carry out their work of oversight over their governors without anybody cajoling them or intimidating them that they will miss out on development funds for their wards. And Honorable Speaker, MCAs will now be able, upon adoption of this report and upon enactment of the requisite legislative proposals, to be able to have development funds allocated to their respective wards. Honorable Speaker, on establishment of entrenchment of state offices, we also did agree on the establishment of the office of the leader for the official opposition and that of the office of the Prime Cabinet Secretary, Honorable Speaker. And Honorable Speaker, I know those within the Azimio coalition, since they are now the official opposition, they will agree on who will take over that position, Honorable Speaker. And I wish them all the best as in that endeavor. Honorable Speaker, on the cost of living, because, Honorable Speaker, the question of the cost of living is one of the matters that we dealt with at length, and there are many proposals that were submitted to us by many stakeholders, including, Honorable Speaker, as I said when I moved the affordable housing bill, on the question of whether to be able to help our economy to recover, we have an opportunity to have an aggressive investment in huge infrastructure projects, Honorable Speaker, and we are able to engage with economists of repute, including those from the SID, who submitted to the committee, Honorable Speaker, that even developed countries like the Republic of Germany, after the Second World War, they had an aggressive investment of huge infrastructural investments, Honorable Speaker, to help the economy to recover. And we did, for those of us who subscribe to the Kenya Kwanza Manifesto, submit before NADCO that part of that endeavor is this housing agenda. And I am glad that even those of our colleagues in the Azimio coalition do agree with us, including the former Prime Minister, that housing as an agenda is critical at this particular time in our republic, Honorable Speaker. And Honorable Speaker, too, on the question of the cost of living, Honorable Speaker, there are many proposals, many good proposals that came from the Azimio coalition, and some, in fact, 90% of what was submitted by the Azimio coalition before NADCO on the cost of living, we are able to adopt those proposals, touching on some of the levies that touch on the cost of fuel in this country. Honorable Speaker, we had also points of divergence on principle, Honorable Speaker, and we respectfully agreed that because some of the proposals they had are proposals that touch on their manifesto in Azimio, especially on the question of subsidies and consumption subsidies. And we were able to push our case, and we were able to agree with our colleagues in the Azimio coalition that on the question of consumer subsidies, they allow the government of the day to implement the manifesto that they sold to the people of Kenya, that had nothing to do with consumer subsidies, but had everything to do with production subsidies, Honorable Speaker. And I am glad, Honorable Speaker, today, as we speak, months after the very heated engagements that we had in NADCO, including some like the Honorable Eugene Wamalwa, pretending to have walked away on the last minute, Honorable Speaker. And I say pretending because Honorable Eugene Wamalwa was part of the engagement in NADCO up to and including the very last meeting on the Friday before the actual signing. And when he excused himself to travel to Kinshasa, he had indicated he'd come back to sign that report the day after. And let me thank all the members of the NADCO committee because they all signed, except the Honorable Eugene Wamalwa. And on the question of the prices of unga, which I know is what was being sold then, I am saying I am glad that today, Honorable Speaker, as we engage in the debate on this report, Honorable Speaker, nobody in this country today, including my colleagues in Azimio, none of them today speaks about the cost of unga when they talk about the cost of living today, Honorable Speaker. I am glad that what we told them in NADCO and what we have told them before, that production subsidies do work. And it is a proven theory in economics that production subsidies give you better results and more lasting results than consumption subsidies. Today, Honorable Speaker, the price of unga that was at 260. I saw yesterday somebody posted one of the groups, one of the brands today retailing at 114 shillings without consumption subsidies, Honorable Speaker. Farmers, patriotic farmers in this country, Honorable Speaker, courtesy of the subsidized fertilizer, have produced millions of bags that they would never have produced, Honorable Speaker, had they not accessed the subsidized fertilizer that was going for 7,000 shillings only a year ago, but today, a year and a half ago, Honorable Speaker, but today they're able to access fertilizer at a price of 2,500 shillings. And that is what has brought down the cost of living, Honorable Speaker, in the terms of the price of unga. And I'm glad those of our friends who donned sufurias on their heads, today their sufurias are very busy in the kitchen, in their kitchens, with unga at 114 shillings, Honorable Speaker, and some of the most expensive brands retailing at 140 shillings, brands that were going at a price of 278 when we were being pushed to go for fertilizer subsidies, for consumption subsidies, Honorable Speaker. Let me, Honorable Speaker, without belaboring a lot of these things much, because the report has been debated even in the public fora, plead with all of us to adopt this report. Is a product of a very fruitful bipartisan engagement, Honorable Speaker. The spirit of NADCO was to ensure that never again, Honorable Speaker, in this country shall we ever have to fight.
Mr. Speaker, the majority leader is about to wind up, but did you hear him saying that unga, the cost of unga has reduced? From which shop, may I ask, from which shops in Nairobi does the majority leader shop from, where the cost of unga is reduced to 140? May I ask, although perhaps I'm going to different shops.
First of all, this is not question time. Carry on. You are prosecuting your point of order wrongly. You're asking questions instead of asking whether he's in order to say what he's saying.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. And you know, Honorable Speaker, I was careful because I'm not in the business of promoting brands. But I have just seen it was the Honorable Ruku who shared the photo of one of the brands retailing in a supermarket in Nairobi at 114 shillings. You could share that picture with Honorable TJ. Honorable Speaker, in conclusion, I was saying this NADCO process, Honorable Speaker, was informed by the desire by all Kenyans to engage in our politics in a way that is devoid of violence, Honorable Speaker. And I am glad that we were able to transact business in NADCO in a very civil manner, in a spirit of give and take, and the Honorable Opio will bear me witness that even the most difficult questions within NADCO, we're able to deal with them in a very good way, in a very civil way, without anybody throwing words at each other and being able to engage. And the whole spirit, Honorable Speaker, of the National Dialogue Committee was that spirit of dialogue. And we did indicate, Honorable Speaker, even as we engaged, that that is a desire of every Kenyan, that whether it is problems that emanate from our electoral processes, whether it is problems that come from the cost of living, never again shall Kenyans have to engage in violence, but we shall be able to dialogue with each other, talk to each other, Honorable Speaker, and be able to resolve all issues that are of concern to us as Kenyans in an amicable manner through dialogue. Honorable Speaker, with those many remarks, see my time is over. I beg to move and plead with all of us to support this report, adopt it, so that we allow the House to be able to be seized of the legislative proposals that have far-reaching effects, especially those that touch on our electoral processes and the challenges that bedevil our IEBC and the delimitation of boundaries. With those many remarks, I beg to move and request the Honorable Leader of Minority, the Honorable Pio Wandai, the NADCO Deputy Delegation Leader of the Azimio Coalition, to second.
Yes, Honorable Ruku, what is...
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. It is good to inform Honorable Kajwang.
Order, you're out of order. He's not on the floor. Order. Cross off and go and quietly tell him.
The Honorable Speaker, how I wish our colleague members would learn the rules of this House and avoid taking us in circles or treating us to unnecessary shenanigans. Honorable Speaker, let me start as I second the motion for the adoption of the National Dialogue Committee report by saying that the establishment of the NADCO was as a result of very, very painful experiences that the country was going through following the elections of August 2022 and following this immense suffering that Kenyans were going through as a result of the skyrocketing cost of living. Those twin issues took hundreds, if not thousands, of Kenyans to the streets across the country. And the country was teetering on the brink of total collapse of governance and indeed lawlessness. And therefore, we must thank the initiators of this NADCO process, the Honorable Raila Amolo Odinga and the Honorable William Ruto. We can also not forget to thank immensely President Olusegun Obasanjo for having made efforts to ensure that both parties saw the sense to come to the table. Honorable Speaker, the spirit that guided the NADCO process was that of give and take. Just like in any negotiation process, it was a question of giving and taking. We had a raft of issues as the Azimio coalition that we had placed on the table. Similarly, the Kenya Kwanza side had their issues. At the end of the day, we were able to harmonize these issues and develop a framework of engagement, which guided our negotiations up to the end. I'm happy that in the face of enormous challenges, in the face of serious differences in opinion, we were able to arrive at specific recommendations touching on specific areas or thematic areas, and to condense this in a report, which is the subject of this motion that is before us today. The Honorable Speaker, I want to summarize really, because 10 minutes is too short. Some of the takeaways in the report, without necessarily repeating, are one, the roadmap to there is the issue of the audit of the elections. We have agreed on this matter to establish within 21 days upon the adoption of this report a panel consisting of 3 persons from each side to develop the terms of reference that will guide this audit process. I want to leave it to that panel to be able to establish these TORs. We must also, of course, talk about the World Development Fund, but more importantly, the matter of the increase of the allocation of the national revenues to the counties from the current minimum 15% to 20%. Those are some of the takeaways. But coming back to the question of the IBC, I keep on saying time and again that in this part of the world, the matter of elections is life and death. Believe you me or not. Elections in this country, just like it is in this part of the world, is a matter of life and death. And therefore, the body that is to be charged with the responsibility of managing elections must be like Caesar's wife, beyond reproach, and must enjoy the confidence of the wider majority of the populace. And indeed, must enjoy the confidence of the key players in the electoral process. That is what informed NADCO's recommendation to restructure the IEBC, to restart the process of appointing the IEBC commissioners, and to recommend specific amendments to the Elections Act, to the IEBC Act, and indeed to the Constitution. We in NADCO resolved that never again should the country go back to where it was. Just few weeks or so before the establishment of the NADCO. That never again should we have a situation where an IEBC would be split down the middle at the critical moment of announcing the results of presidential elections. That it was never the intention of the framers of our constitution, and indeed Kenyans, when they adopted this constitution in 2010, that a body charged with the onerous responsibility of managing elections would be split in the middle. Honorable Speaker. The Honorable Speaker, the issue of the two-third gender principle, the not more than two-third gender principle, has been adequately captured in the report. It was our view in NADCO that since the time was not adequate, and since there was a working group, a multi-sectoral working group, dealing with that question, that we give it time to complete its work and compile a report, which report would be treated as part of the NADCO. The report that would come from the multi-sectoral group, working group, dealing with the question of the not more than two-third gender principle, within the letter and spirit of the NADCO report, would be part of the NADCO report. And I want to join Honorable Chungwa in urging that group. I had a chance to meet them yesterday, Honorable Speaker. They came calling to my office, and I had very, very fruitful engagement with them. And I urged them yesterday to fast-track the process and submit their report with the proposed instruments to this House, even as we proceed with this process of implementing the NADCO recommendations. Honorable Speaker, there are some issues that the committee, in its wisdom, recommended that they be referred to the principals, the two principals, Honorables William Ruto and Honorable Raila Amolo Odinga. Honorable Speaker, one of the issues that we agreed should be referred to the two principals is the matter of the Cherera 4. the 4 IBC commissioners that differed in opinion with the other three. It was in the wisdom of the committee that matter be referred to the 2 principals to perhaps pursue a settlement outside the court process. We also agreed that on the matter of violence, including violence against the public by the police and police killings, be referred to the principals with a view to forming a system, to establishing a system of undertaking thorough investigations and holding whoever is responsible.
1 minute.
So, Honorable Speaker, in a nutshell, as I conclude, given that the document we are discussing today, the NADCO report, is a negotiated document, is a consensus document, our understanding and our position is that such a document is not open to any form of amendment. And that principle also applies equally to the attendant instruments, that is the proposed legislative amendments to statutes and the Constitution. So with those very many remarks, I second and I urge my colleagues to adopt this report in totality and to allow the country to move forward in one accord. Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Thank you, Minority Leader. I now propose the question, which is that this House adopts the report of the National Dialogue Committee laid on the table of the House on Thursday, 7th December 2023. Karoli Omondi.
Thank you very much, Honorable Speaker. I did have opportunity to make both a personal presentation to this committee as well as a group presentation by 27 other honorable members of parliament. I would like to talk about 3 things. I've gone through it, and I must thank the committee for at least recording and acknowledging our presentation as 27 members of parliament who called for the creation of 10 additional counties based on the original Kilifi draft and other instruments that preceded the enactment of the 2010 Constitution. However, I've noted that there are several glaring misrepresentations of what the position of the Constitution is in relation to the way new counties are established. You will agree, Honorable Speaker, that the IEBC has completely no role in the review and delimitation of county boundaries. This is preserved for this National Assembly under Article 188, where by a resolution we can establish a commission that will investigate the boundaries based on a criteria which is in the Constitution and establish new counties. I've realized when I've read the report where they're making a statement under paragraph 201, and I believe it is FGHI, that the establishment of new counties require a referendum because such an act would interfere with the territory of Kenya. Nothing would be further from the truth. I've looked at Articles 5 and 6 of the Constitution, which clearly define what the territory of Kenya is, and territory of a country is defined by reference to external boundaries in terms of the neighboring countries, never by what the boundaries are within the county, which is where the boundaries for counties are. I think it would be wrong to adopt the report without any amendment when such a glaring misrepresentation is in the report, which that is not what the law says. Yes, they are saying we also need a referendum, which is not the correct position. A referendum is clearly defined under Articles 255 and 256. And you only go to a referendum when you're dealing with counties if you want to change the objects, principles, and structure of devolved units. Creating new counties do not interfere with objects under Article 174, principles under 175, and the structure under 176. Structure is simply that a county government will have a county executive and a county assembly. There's no other structure. So it is wrong. I think we need to amend some of these resolutions here, and then, have accuracy in the report. So even though it is a product of negotiated settlement, we cannot allow it just to go with such misrepresentations. Secondly, I did make a presentation on party discipline as well as registration of new political parties. My presentation has not been covered here, and I would like it to go on record that, again, if you read the chapters on this report on party discipline, there is a lot of confusion, whether we are a presidential system, a parliamentary system, and if we are a parliamentary system, which one are we? What is being presented here is a situation where elections are elections of political parties, not of individuals who are elected by individual mandate from the people. We should look at what happens in pure presidential systems, which is a system of governance that we have in this country, and adopt mechanisms that encourage party discipline within a presidential system. We cannot be importing parliamentary systems, practices and norms of parliamentary systems into a presidential system without understanding what they are. What I'm trying to say is, in a parliamentary system, if you are elected as an individual in that party, there are certain freedoms and independence that you enjoy. If the party is elected and the party nominates you on the basis, like in South Africa, there are certain limitations that you have. In a presidential system, you have a direct mandate from the people. You have a voice to vote as you wish in this house, only taking account of the interests of your people. That is what happens in America. That is what happens in all other jurisdictions with the presidential system. And that is where we should go. Finally, I did propose, because of the bad manners of many people in the Republic of Kenya and the problems that we are having, that it is essential to institute what I call nationhood science, so as to promote the values and principles under Article 10. I've not seen it captured here. I wanted to go in the record of this House that I feel very strongly that we need to introduce civic education, entrepreneurship, and other things that will inculcate the national values and principles under Article 10 of the Constitution in our young before they get spoiled, rotten, and mess up our country. With those remarks, I will be moving some amendments on the recommendations of the report. Thank you very much, Madam Speaker.
Thank you. Next chance to the member for Marsabit, Honorable Wako.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker, for allowing me to add my voice to this very important debate on NADCO report, as I also take this opportunity to congratulate the committee members who sacrificed a lot of their time and came up with this report that will guide our nation into a better nation. Honorable Speaker, the time they spent and the memorandums they have received from different Kenyans, and when the majority leader was moving, he said that 60 stakeholders appeared before the committee, which means that Kenyans took a lot of interest in this and they participated fully. Again, the majority leader told us that out of their report, 9 legislation proposals have been developed, which clearly shows us that they have given a lot of attention, and the legislative proposals will of course capture the needs of this country and will guide us, as I said, into a better nation. IBC, the issue of IBC seems to have been given a lot of attention, and reconstituting IBC, of course, is a major thing today. We are going to second year after elections, and we have a lot of gaps since we did our last elections. We need IBC members to come in and IBC Commission to start off their work so that we prepare ourselves, we take care of the past mess, and also make sure that we have filled the gaps. There are many MCS, many members of parliament who have gone to be with the Lord. And now, if we reconstitute, then we will get on to work. And I recommend that the earlier we do, the better for our nation. Again, Madam Speaker, one encouraging thing that the majority leader said is that this House, this Augusta House has the mandate to extend the time in case we need, because the panel is to complete their work within 90 days. But if that is not achievable, then we have the mandate to add more days so that they can conclude. But it is my prayer that we will conclude this matter as soon as possible so that Kenyans will have the services that they need. Madam Speaker, the issue of delimitation of the boundaries is of interest to many of us, and we know that that time is also coming to an end. It is my prayer that we will come up with some proposals that will help us, because many counties, many wards, many areas have been suffering because of this challenge that we've had. And the earlier we also embark on this so that we can mark the boundaries so that people can coexist and also know their areas, that will also help our nation. One important thing they have covered is the issue of Ward Development Fund, which is a big encouragement to all our MCS, because as they sit and wait, once we approve this, then the MCS will be able to do their work freely without any challenge, without, placing the governor or the county executive. They'll be able to be empowered, because as of now, many of them are not able to do what they want to do in their counties, because they do not have these funds. And what I want to say on this is, even for the MCS, when these funds will be released and will be established, and of course, implementation takes place, they should be accountable and they should have enough public participation so that the counties, the wards can benefit, and the people who elected them can also feel the power. And with those few remarks, I support, and it is my prayer that we will all participate in this debate. Thank you.
Honorable John Mbadi.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, as I support this report, I want to mention a few things. Number one is for there to be a discussion or dialogue of this nature. Certainly it had to be preceded by some kind of or form of crisis. We had a crisis, as has been ably talked about by our minority leader. But Madam Speaker, we need to ask ourselves this question. I've been around here from 15th of January, 2008. I've actually been in this chamber for more than 16 years. And every time from that time of the 10th Parliament, when we had post-election violence, we keep on using the same words, same terminologies as both leaders today used. That never again will this country experience the kind of violence. I mean, this is becoming rhetoric, Madam Speaker. And I want to say that as a country, we must ask ourselves fundamental questions. Why is it that after every election, we always have a crisis in this country? That is the question that we need to address. But looking at this report, I'm afraid to say that we still fear. We still gloss over issues. We have not addressed the main issue, the biggest problem, the challenge that we are facing as a country. It is about the system of government. Madam Speaker, some people call it winner takes it all. Some other people call it the feeling and the sense of exclusivity and inclusivity. Why do some Kenyans feel belonging to this country more than others, especially when elections are conducted? We need to ask ourselves that question. And looking at this report, Madam Speaker, we are not solving this problem. If we have decided that this system of government, the presidential system, is not working for us, then why don't we go the full hog and go parliamentary system? Why are we again creating systems that are very difficult to understand? That you are creating an office of the opposition leader when you have a presidential system? How does it work? I mean, let us not pretend and cheat ourselves and lie to ourselves that we are solving this problem. We are not. And I am afraid to say that next time, again, after 5 years, we will be back to the same discussions. Madam Speaker, on the issue of electoral management and the team tasked with the responsibility to manage our election. Madam Speaker, the truth is that in this country, nobody is neutral. None of us. All of us vote, at least those who want to vote. Even those bishops, you give them a vote, they will vote for someone. So why do we pretend? And we know we are in a divided society. This country is almost split 50-50. For us to have confidence in the Electoral Commission, let us bite the bullet and say, those who are in the majority, bring this number of commissioners. Those who are in the minority, bring this number of commissioners to preside over election and see where do we get the chairman. We can even appeal to our brothers. Let us not talk about sovereignty if we cannot manage it. Let us accept and even ask our partners, our friends across the continent, give us somebody. If Obasanjo can come all the way from Nigeria to come and mediate, we had Kofi Annan coming here to mediate. Why don't we just accept that because we can't trust any one of us to chair our commission and produce a good result, then let's go that route and have someone from out there to preside over election. Finally, Madam Speaker, if you allow me, on the issue of cost of living, my friend, those are opinions. Wait for your time. Who can help this member of parliament? Now, my last comment, Madam Speaker, if you allow me, is on the cost of living. Madam Speaker, let us not pretend and cheat ourselves that cost of living has gone down. It is only food-driven inflation which has gone down, and that is because we have had good rains. Madam Speaker, it has nothing to do with inputs. If rains fail in this country even for one season, we will go back to where we were. All the time when we had good rains in this country, Madam Speaker, we have had good harvest, and the cost of food generally go down. Honorable Baya has no point. There's no point of order. Madam Speaker.
I want to speak on that.
Honorable
I know there is
Badi, take
no
your
point of order.
seat. Take your seat. Honorable Owen is on a point of order.
Point of order on relevance and truthfulness of information. You know, when John Badi stands, a ranking member, and says that cost of life has not gone down, I would like him to think like an economist, not as an accountant. You know, Honorable Speaker, you know, John Badi needs to know that when the dollar goes down, you know, the cost of production, the cost of export and import, all these go down. When they go down, they translate to money, real money that goes into the pockets of the people. When they go into the pockets of
Honorable
the people,
Baya,
it means they have
Honorable
more
Owen.
money.
Order, Honorable Owen Baya. That sounds like information. Honorable Badi, complete.
First of all,
What is out of order? There is no one on the floor.
As
Honorable Rocco, nobody is out of order. Honorable Badi, please
as I
conclude.
conclude, you know, when you hear the deputy leader of majority talk about the dollar going, what do you really mean? So talk about things that make sense. Which dollar is going down and which shilling is going up? You know, relevance, I am very relevant. I was talking about the NADCO report. It is Honorable Owen Baya who has brought dollar, which is not in this report. But let me conclude, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, cost of living has not gone down. It will not go down with the way this government is managing our economy. It will not go down. I am telling you, let rains fail even for one season. We will be worse off than even we were last year. So let us not cheat ourselves. Let us address the issue of cost of living with clear minds, professionalism. Let us bring technical people, people who understand how systems work, not academics like David D. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Next chance to the member for Tigania West, Honorable John Mutunga.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, I would like to pick it up from where Honorable Bandi has left. Honorable Speaker, if we negotiated from the beginning, we will never get to where we are. What has been happening in this country after a stiff political competition, we continue with political competition, even in this house. Honorable Speaker, I think the spirit of the NADCO was a good spirit that we need to emulate. Honorable Speaker, if we also start to speaking the truth and telling Kenyans the truth, as guided by Article 35, subsection 2 of the Constitution, I think we would take this nation very far. Honorable Speaker, sometimes you can hear a member say that the housing levy or the affordable housing program is not benefiting people in Azimio. Today, the Honorable Karoli Omondi confirmed that the first phase of the affordable housing has already kicked off or completed in his constituency. It is very unfortunate that some members can say it is only happening in the in the constituency where the government is represented. That is not true. Let us stick to the truth and let us stop telling Kenyans lies. Honorable Speaker, having said that, let me thank the committee for the good work that they have done. Honorable Speaker, the committee has brought out issues that needed to be scrutinized with sober minds. They brought out issues that have to do with IBC. I don't need to belabor that point, but the point of cost of living. They brought out very key proposals. Reduce the cost of travel by half. Reduce the DSA by 30%. Merge some of the institutions. These are proposals that need to be looked into. Sometimes we also overspend on things that did not matter. Creation of the office of the Prime Minister and that of the leader of opposition. I think if we had an office of the leader of opposition, we would have more organized opposition in this country. And therefore, we will not be having chaotic situations where people just emotionally get to the streets. Fast-tracking the legislative reforms that basically will harmonize the Senate and the National Assembly. We should not be taking each other to court. These are some of the things that you should have done long ago. This is one nation. One nation should be able to speak to oneself and then come up with ways of doing business.
And maybe the opposition can carry out its oversight
to a year, but to tie to a period. Instead of 8 to 12, we could say 10 to 17. We will have resolved the mischief that the report is trying to resolve without getting into the quagmire that we might be if we try to do this thing before the next election. Secondly, is the audit of the 2022 general elections. Most people fear this because they think we'll be re-examining and revisiting the declaration of results and who won and who did not win. Far from it. Article 81(2) of our constitution is very clear. Every election, and it's not just for the president, every election must be transparent, it must be accountable, it must be efficient. And those three words ought to be demonstrated at any time any Kenyan wants to see how it was done. It will bring settlement, not just for the past, but for the future in terms of the elections when we are moving this way. Now, I know that this kind of report requires goodwill. For us to move forward, we will require that goodwill. I am not quite sure why we've taken 4 months since 25th of November to even table this report here. I do not know whether that is consistent with goodwill, but I do know, having been in the first process, that we were beleaguered by absence of goodwill at certain stages. I want to really urge that if we are to go this way, there must be goodwill. I want to say that contrary to what some people think, this report is actually not inconsistent with the judgment that was issued by the High Court just a fortnight ago. Indeed, in that judgment, the judge correctly observed that issues like constitution of the panel is a political question that should be left to politicians under the political doctrines question. But the judge found it necessary to come to that judgment because the process was delaying. Had we started this immediately the report was out, we'd probably have forestalled that kind of decision. But there's nothing lost because the judge is saying, do this within 90 days. The report is recommending, let us do it within 90 days. It is possible for those 90 days to coincide if there's goodwill. Even if we didn't, if there was goodwill, it is possible for the two principals who initiated the process to have a situation where there's consensus and discussion in terms of the names that will be recommended, so that when the names come here for the IBC commissioners, we do not end up in voting and confrontation as sometimes we are given to. Having said that, Madam Speaker, I want to say that there are areas that will require more careful navigation. It is not to say we don't adopt the report. As we adopt it, we will require more careful navigation. One of them is whether we require a referendum. My casual glance of the report suggests we will in 4 different areas. The second one is this thing of recommending a Senate of 7 years. That will require us to really re-examine a number of things. The third one is the idea of a staggered election. There's a host of reasons why the general election is held on the same day. And if we are to interfere with it, we have to navigate very carefully. Lastly, Madam Speaker, is the question of the leader of opposition and the office of the chief prime cabinet secretary. We will have to re-examine our structure of government because the report does not go that far. It does not say whether these officers are to be in this house and what role they are to play. That is left for us. So, Madam Speaker, I support with the caution that we need to start thinking more in terms of giving intention to the report. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Member for Sigowet Soin, Honorable Justice.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker, for the opportunity to contribute to this very important report.